The studio lights were bright, the crowd loud, and cameras pointed from every angle as Vin Diesel walked onto the stage of Jimmy Kimmel Live, dressed in a sharp black shirt and simple jeans. Vin gave his usual calm smile, waved at the audience, and sat down. Millions of people around the world were watching, expecting a fun interview. They thought it would be about his new charity project helping young people in poor countries. Something Vin had worked on for many months. But something didn't feel right. Jimmy Kimmel opened the conversation with a joke about Vin's action movies. The crowd laughed, and Vin smiled politely. But Jimmy's second question was different. So Vin, how many cars did you crash filming Fast X, or was it all CGI? Because you're getting too old now. The audience laughed again, but Vin's smile became smaller. He gave a light answer, but inside he felt something was wrong. He'd come to talk about a serious project, not to be mocked. The questions kept coming sharper and more personal. Jimmy made fun of Vin's voice, called his acting one note, and even brought up old gossip stories. Vin tried to redirect the conversation to the charity, explaining how his foundation helped kids escape gang life and get education. Jimmy quickly changed the topic back to gossip, ignoring Vin's work completely. Vin sat still, feeling the trap closing in. This was not an interview about movies or charity. This was something else. He remembered hearing whispers in Hollywood circles about a quiet real actor should not speak against political systems or corporate powers. Those who tried were mocked, attacked, and pushed out. Jimmy then mentioned recent internet jokes about Vin's loyalty to the Fast and Furious movies. Some people say you've been milking this franchise forever. Vin, Jimmy said with a grin, maybe it's time to retire. The audience laughed nervously. Vin's smile returned, but this time it was different, calm, sharp, full of meaning. He leaned forward slightly and said, "There's a reason people still watch. It's called heart." Something a few people in this industry forgot. The room became quiet. Jimmy forced a laugh, trying to regain control, but it was too late. Vin's expression turned serious. "You know, it's funny, Jimmy. People always think they know everything, but they only know the trailer. The full story is never shown." There was a tense silence. Vin's words were soft, but everyone in the room could feel the weight of them. Jimmy tried to cut him off with a joke, but Vin stood up calmly, removed his microphone, and said into the camera, "Maybe someday Hollywood will care more about truth than ratings." The crowd gasped. The producers behind the camera waved, their hands trying to stop him. Jimmy looked shocked and speechless. Vin walked off the stage, live on air, while millions of people at home watched in silence. Within minutes, the internet exploded. News channels replayed the clip again and again. Social media was flooded with posts. Some people called Vin brave, others called him rude. But no one could ignore it. Something big had just happened on live television. What people didn't know was that the interview was only the surface. Behind the smiles and jokes, a deeper battle was happening. Vin had come prepared. He knew secrets about Hollywood's ties to political power. He had documents, proof, and stories that many people wanted to keep hidden. As Vin walked out of the studio and into the dark streets of Los Angeles, his phone lit up with messages. Some were warnings, others were offers to stay quiet. But Vin had made his choice. He had just taken the first step in a much bigger fight. Vin sat in the back seat of a quiet black car, his phone buzzing nonstop. His manager Laura sat next to him, reading updates out loud. "Every channel is running your walkout. Twitter is on fire. Some say you lost your temper, others are calling you a hero." Vin stared out the window. He knew the real storm hadn't even started yet. Laura opened a message from an anonymous source. It was a short video clip from inside the Jimmy Kimmel production office, secretly recorded before the show. In the video, producers were seen giving Jimmy instructions. "Push him," one producer said. "Don't let him talk about his charity. Keep it funny. Keep it personal. Another voice added, remember what the senator's office said? We don't want him promoting any anti-lobbying talk. Venn felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just a talk show stunt. This was political. His charity project had uncovered financial links between Hollywood and powerful political lobbies. He had tried to use his fame to expose it, but the system was striking back. Laura looked at him. We need to release this clip. People deserve to see the truth. Venn shook his head. Not yet. We do it smart, not fast. By morning, every news channel was still talking about the walkout. Mainstream media hosts laughed at Venn, calling it another Hollywood meltdown. But alternative news channels were asking serious questions. Why was Jimmy Kimmel so aggressive? Why was Venn's charity never mentioned? Suddenly, an investigative reporter named Sarah Harper broke a story online. She released leaked emails. Between Jimmy Kimmel's team and lobbyists from a large energy company, the emails showed direct orders to prevent Venn from speaking about his charity's latest report. One that exposed how Hollywood studios received secret funding to push pro-corporate messages in blockbuster films. The story spread like wildfire. People who had mocked Venn started changing their tone. Now it was bigger than movies or celebrity gossip. It was about corruption hiding behind entertainment. By noon, a hashtag exploded on social media. Hashtag Let Venn Speak. Thousands of young activists posted clips from Venn's charity work helping children, funding schools, protecting small communities from land grabs. The walkout video reached over 50 million views. Inside political offices in Washington, alarm bells rang. Several senators who received campaign money from the same energy company rushed to distance themselves from the growing scandal. Venn's name was mentioned on the Senate floor. A few bold voices demanded a full investigation into media manipulation for political gain. Venn and Laura met with Daniel, a former political advisor who now worked for transparency groups. He laid out the situation. This is not just about you anymore, Venn. Your charity touched something powerful. Hollywood studios, political groups, and corporate money have been working together for years. They use interviews, movies, late-night shows, everything to control what people think. Venn's jaw tightened. We take this public. All of it. Daniel agreed, but warned. The moment we release everything, they'll come after you hard. Fake stories, threats, maybe even legal attacks. Venn leaned forward. Let them come. I won't back down. That evening, Laura posted the first Proof the Secret video from the Kimmel studio on Venn's social media. It was simple. No edits, no dramatic music. It's just the raw, ugly truth of media producers being told what to say. Within hours, it became the most viewed clip of the year. News anchors who had mocked Venn hours earlier now demanded answers. Jimmy Kimmel canceled his next live show without explanation. The media house released a weak statement calling it a misunderstanding, but no one believed it. International reporters picked up the story. European and Asian channels connected the dots, revealing similar cases in their countries. Streets in Los Angeles filled with protesters. People held signs saying, "We want truth, not scripts." Venn watched from his home.com, but focused. He had turned one ugly interview into the beginning of a global storm. And the storm was just getting started. Venn woke up to the sound of reporters outside his house. Dozens of news vans were lined up on the street, cameras pointing at his gate. Overnight, his story had grown far beyond Hollywood. International headlines read, Actor exposes media. Corruption and Vin Diesel versus political giants. The world was watching, but Venn knew this was just the surface. The real fight was hidden in backdoor deals, secret payments, and political manipulation. Inside the house, Laura placed more files on the kitchen table. Daniel joined them, his face tense. They've started their counterattack, Daniel said. Look at this. He pointed to fresh news stories. Big channels were running headlines calling Venn unstable. Tabloids published false rumors about his personal life. Old videos were taken out of context to make him look angry and dangerous. "They're trying to turn public opinion against you," Laura said, her voice steady. Classic playbook. Attack the messenger, then stayed calm. "Good. That means they're scared." Daniel smiled for a second. "Yes, and we just got stronger." Sarah Harper's investigation confirmed everything. She traced payments from the energy lobby straight to Hollywood media companies. Millions of dollars paid to promote fake climate news, attack reform activists, and protect big businesses. Vin looked at the documents carefully. Bank transfers, contracts, emails, they had it all. "What about politicians?" he asked. Daniel nodded. Even worse. 3 senators received illegal donations funneled through those same media companies. They used late-night comedy shows to make a joke out of activists while pushing false political messages. Then clenched his fists. "We show the world everything." "No more hiding," Laura agreed. "There's more." The European Parliament is reacting. Activists are demanding their governments investigate how American media influences global elections. "If we move now, we'll have global support." That afternoon, Venn held a live press conference streamed to millions. No media filters, no edited clips, just raw truth. He spoke directly to people across the world. "I came to a talk show to speak about children, education, and justice. Instead, I was silenced. Why? Because I stood against money-controlling media. Because I spoke about power hiding behind jokes. This isn't just about me. This is about you, your families, your future. They don't just lie in politics. They lie in entertainment, in movies, in comedy. They turn truth into a joke and make injustice look normal. Today, we fight back." Vin's words shook the internet. His press conference was viewed over 100 million times in 24 hours. Protesters gathered outside major TV networks in New York, Los Angeles, London, and Paris. Hashtags like #TruthOverEntertainment and #BreakTheScript filled social media. Celebrities who had stayed quiet finally spoke out, admitting they too were pressured to follow the script. Inside Washington, panic spread. Congress faced mounting pressure. Journalists camped outside the Capitol building. Senators were bombarded with questions about the leaked donations. Daniel received a late-night call. "They're opening a formal investigation," he said, hardly believing it himself. "A special congressional hearing into media and political collusion is starting. Next week, they've called you to testify, Vin." Vin took a deep breath. "It's time to speak where they tried to silence me." Meanwhile, the people behind the system were preparing to. Media executives held secret meetings. Political advisors drafted attack ads. Hidden lobbyists reached out to Vin's sponsors, trying to cut his funding. Powerful forces were lining up against him. But something had changed. For the first time in decades, people around the world weren't laughing at jokes designed to distract them. They were paying attention. They were angry. They were demanding truth. Vin looked at Laura and Daniel. They wanted to make an example. "Out of me, now I'll make an example out of them." The next chapter wouldn't be fought in a studio. It would happen under oath, in front of Congress, with the whole world watching. The system had played its last scripted joke. Vin was ready to answer it live, unscripted and unstoppable. The Capitol was overflowing with reporters. Flags flew high, security was tight, and the hearing room was packed. For the first time in history, an international movie star was testifying. Before Congress, not about Hollywood, but about political corruption hiding behind entertainment. Vin Diesel sat calmly at the witness table, his hands folded, his face steady. Behind him, Laura and Daniel sat with folders full of evidence. Across the room, politicians whispered. Some looked nervous, others angry. The special hearing was named Influence Operations in Media and Entertainment. Millions of people watched on live streams, news channels, and social media. The same people who once cheered for fast cars and action movies now watched Vin for something much more serious truth. The chairwoman of the committee, Senator Ruiz, opened the hearing. Today, we hear testimony regarding corporate manipulation of entertainment media political influence through celebrity platforms, and the intentional silencing of dissenting voices. Mr. Diesel, you may begin. Vin's voice was calm but strong. I grew up believing movies inspired people. But somewhere along the way, movies became weapons. Talk shows became political tools. And when I tried to speak about helping kids and exposing corruption, I wasn't just interrupted, I was ambushed. He continued, revealing details from Sarah Harper's investigation. He explained how lobbyists funded blockbuster franchises not to entertain, but to distract. How comedy shows were paid to mock reformers and protect big industries. How his charity's report on illegal land grabs by energy companies was the real reason Jimmy Kimmel's team attacked him on live television. Senator Ruiz leaned forward. Do you have proof of these claims? Vin nodded to Daniel, who handed over USB drives, bank transfers, emails, signed agreements, secret recordings, names of lobbyists, media producers, even politicians who took dirty money. Screens in the hearing room displayed shocking images, wire transfers worth millions. Scripts edited by political consultants, emails between media executives and corporate donors. Across the world, people were glued to their screens. News anchors struggled to keep up with the wave of information. On social media, clips from the hearing were trending in every country. Protesters gathered outside media headquarters. In Europe, lawmakers announced similar hearings. In South America, youth leaders demanded Hollywood be banned from influencing their elections. But the hearing was not without resistance. Senator Hargrave, one of the politicians accused in the leaked files, tried to discredit Vin. You're just an actor. Why should America believe you? Vin didn't flinch. I may be an actor, but I'm standing here with proof. You're a senator sitting here with none. Room erupted in applause, something rarely allowed in Congress. Hargrave went silent. The hearing continued for hours. More whistleblowers joined through video calls, former producers, writers, even comedians who admitted they were told to push certain political views or lose their careers. By evening, the damage was clear. Networks were exposed, political campaigns, linked to secret media funds and American entertainment shown to be a tool of manipulation. When Vin stepped out of the Capitol building, crowds were waiting. Journalists screamed questions, people cheered, and banners flew high, reading "Truth wins and we see you now." Laura whispered, "They can't spin this anymore." Daniel nodded. "We broke through, but Vin stayed serious. This isn't the end. This is only the trial. The real fight is what happens after." That night, media houses released emergency statements. Some tried to apologize, others blamed rogue employees. Powerful people scrambled to cover their tracks. But the public wasn't buying it anymore. Governments around the world announced plans to clean up their media systems. Hollywood's biggest studios saw their stock prices crash. Lobbying firms faced investigations. Lawsuits were filed against networks that had spread false political narratives. Vin didn't smile. He knew these people had power, money, and influence. They would not go down easily. But they had made one mistake, trying to silence the wrong person in front of the wrong audience. The world had heard the truth. And now, the fight for justice was moving from Congress to every courtroom and every street where people demanded change. Vin returned to Los Angeles, but nothing felt the same. His home, once a quiet retreat, had become a command center. Protesters lined the streets, not to attack him, but to support him. Young people gathered with signs that read "Truth over fame" and "We stand with Vin." Helicopters circled overhead, and media vans never left his street. Vin stayed inside, planning his next move, knowing the storm was far from over. Inside the living room, Laura and Daniel sat with him, eyes fixed on the latest headlines. Overnight, powerful forces had struck back. Major entertainment companies filed lawsuits against Vin, accusing him of defamation. Tabloids released new smear stories, twisting his words, calling him anti-American and a traitor to Hollywood. Sponsored online accounts pushed false narratives, trying to confuse the public. Some news anchors mocked his testimony, claiming it was just performance art. Daniel's phone buzzed. He frowned. "It's worse than we thought," he said. "Some of your oldest business contracts are being canceled. Brand sponsors are pulling out. Even international distributors are blacklisting your films." Then listened without reaction. This was expected. When the system loses control, it punishes you. Laura placed a hand on his shoulder. But not everyone is scared. People around the world are standing up. Look at this, she showed her. Phone screen videos from Brazil, Nigeria, and France. Thousands of people rallying, demanding their governments investigate media corruption. Schools were using Vin's congressional testimony as teaching material. Journalists in Europe uncovered their own Hollywood-style manipulation tactics. The story was growing far beyond America. Then took a breath. Then we push harder. That afternoon, they released the full report, over 200 pages of contracts, emails, payments, and hidden political connections between lobbyists, Hollywood executives, and corrupt politicians. Vin didn't give any interviews. He spoke directly to the people in a 10-minute video posted on every platform, calmly explaining the findings in simple words. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the video broke world records, watched by more people than any Hollywood movie that year. International courts announced new investigations. Global celebrities finally broke their silence, apologizing for staying quiet and sharing Vin's video on their pages. Pressure reached Washington like a crashing wave. Senators who had laughed at Vin days earlier now faced angry protesters outside their offices. Investigations were launched into two of the biggest media companies in America. Share prices for those companies fell sharply. Secret lobbying firms shut down their websites and went silent. Late-night shows, once the top-rated programs, began to lose viewers by millions. People no longer trusted the jokes, knowing they had been tools of propaganda. Advertisers pulled their money, shows were canceled, and talk show hosts started disappearing from TV screens. Inside Vin's house, Daniel watched the markets crash and smiled. They thought a talk show could destroy you. Now their entire system is falling apart. Vin didn't celebrate. He stayed calm, knowing the fight wasn't over. They still controlled courts, money, and certain politicians. The next step was to turn public anger into permanent change. 3 days later, Laura received an invitation. Vang was asked to attend the International Truth in Media Summit in Switzerland, where global leaders would discuss new laws for media transparency. It was the first summit of its kind. Broadcast lived to billions. Vin didn't hesitate. "I'll go. Let me take this global." As they packed their bags, Vin knew the journey would be dangerous. Powerful enemies didn't surrender easily. But the world had changed. People were awake now. They had seen the faces behind the curtain. Vin looked out of his window at the crowds cheering his name. He whispered, "They tried to cancel me with laughter. Now they're the joke. And this joke will end in justice." The cold air of Geneva greeted Vin Diesel as his plane touched down. The International Truth in Media Summit was being held inside one of the most secure government buildings in Switzerland. Police lined the streets, protesters gathered outside, and reporters waited near barricades. This was no movie premiere. This was history in the making. Vin's arrival was broadcast across the world, cameras capturing every step as he walked into the summit hall with Laura and Daniel by his side. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. World leaders sat behind nameplates. Representatives from dozens of countries filled the massive auditorium. Activists, independent journalists, and media experts watched from the galleries. The summit was designed to be a turning point and international effort to demand media transparency and break the link between political power and entertainment manipulation. Venn stood on the grand stage, facing the largest audience of his life. There were no scripts, no directors, no actors, only truth. A tea began, his voice steady. I was thrown off a TV show for trying to talk about charity. But the world now knows it was never about charity. It was about hiding political corruption using laughter and distraction. This summit is not about my story. It's about every country where media has been used as a tool to silence truth. The room stayed silent, listening to every word. Vin detailed the findings his team had uncovered: how political groups laundered money through media companies, how global corporations paid for soft influence inside movies, and how late-night shows became weapons of misinformation. One by one, international leaders spoke up. The representative from France admitted their entertainment industry had similar problems. An African diplomat shared how foreign-funded movies shaped political opinions in small nations. Even representatives from Asia raised concerns about Hollywood's silent role in swaying public behavior. Daniel handed Vin the final document. "It's time," he whispered. Vin walked up to the main podium and presented a formal proposal: the Global Media Transparency Charter, a legally binding agreement between countries, forcing all media companies to reveal their funding sources, banning political donations from media conglomerates, and placing strict punishments on corporations that used entertainment for secret lobbying. It was a bold, almost impossible proposal. But the room didn't laugh. Not this time. By the end of the first day, 15 countries signed the initial agreement. Over the next 24 hours, the number grew to 32. Street protests in Europe pushed more governments to act. Social media exploded again, demanding change in nations still silent. Back in America, the scene was chaotic. News anchors who had mocked Vin now scrambled to cover the summit, knowing millions of viewers were watching. One of the largest media corporations filed for bankruptcy as advertisers pulled out. More politicians were named in leaked documents, and high-profile arrests began in New York and Washington. Inside the summit, Vin remained focused. Laura gave him updates. Hollywood producers had resigned. Secretive lobbying firms had been raided. And international courts had agreed to freeze assets of companies found guilty of media manipulation. Daniel leaned over and whispered, "You did it. You've started something they can't stop." Vin nodded, his face serious. "This isn't about revenge. This is about fixing something that should have never been broken." By the last day of the summit, 50 countries had signed the charter, promising a new age of truth in media. The world watched as Vin delivered closing words. "This is bigger than me, bigger than any actor or politician. It's about our right to truth. They tried to silence me with cheap jokes, but truth is louder than laughter. From today, entertainment belongs to the people, not to politicians, not to corporations." As the crowd stood in applause, Vin knew the battle had changed. The system that once mocked him had been exposed before the world. The next chapter was about building something new: a media world without lies, without scripts, without hidden masters. And as Vin walked out of the summit, thousands of people waited in the streets, cheering. Not for a movie star, but for a fighter who had turned the tables on the most powerful system on Earth. Snowflakes fell gently over Geneva as Vin Diesel stepped out of the summit building. The streets were alive with cheering crowds, holding banners with words like "Truth wins" and "No more scripts." Reporters followed every step, but Vin said nothing. This moment was bigger than sound bites, was a global shift. Back in Los Angeles, the aftershocks were immediate. 3 major Hollywood studios halted operations as criminal investigations opened. Top media executives resigned, some arrested for fraud and political interference. Senate hearings in Washington expanded into full corruption trials. Senators who once mocked Vin now faced public shame and legal battles. Inside Vin's home, Laura refreshed her computer screen, watching the signatures on the Global Media Transparency Charter grow. 67 countries had signed within 72 hours. Schools worldwide announced new education programs on media literacy, teaching students how to detect manipulation in entertainment. Independent news platforms experienced record growth as people demanded uncensored information. Daniel sat across from Vin, exhausted but smiling. They tried everything to destroy you. Lawsuits, smear campaigns, false stories. And you crushed them with truth. Vin remained quiet, sipping his tea. He was relieved, but he understood the battle wasn't completely over. The old system had cracks now, but it wouldn't give up easily. There would be long court battles, political resistance, and attempts to rebuild the same control under new names. Laura put down her tablet. Jimmy Kimmel's network just released a statement. They're shutting down his show permanently. Advertisers pulled out and viewership crashed to record lows. Then nodded. It was never about Jimmy. He was just a tool for something bigger. The real win is people woke up. Later that night, Vin stood on his balcony looking at the lights of Los Angeles. This city had made him famous, but it had also tried to break him when he stood up. Now, things were changing. Young activists marched through Hollywood Boulevard demanding new rules. New filmmakers promised to create honest stories. Journalists who once followed scripts were quitting corporate networks and starting their own platforms. Vin's phone vibrated. A message from a small African country appeared. Their president personally thanked him for inspiring them to break foreign media control. Another message came from South America, where protesters forced their government to open an investigation into political entertainment funding. Daniel stepped outside. They want you to speak at the UN next month. They're calling it the Global People's Media Reform Conference. Vin gave a small smile. From action movies to action in real life. Laura laughed softly. And you didn't need any stunts for this one. It's just the truth. In the following weeks, Vin stayed off movie sets. He traveled to countries that were reforming their systems. He met with young leaders, helped build new foundations for truthful media, and supported grassroots organizations exposing corruption. Across continents, people recognized him not for his on-screen roles, but for being the person who took a stand when everyone expected him to stay quiet. Months later, a new international law passed. Media companies were required to publicly disclose political funding. Entertainment shows could no longer hide secret lobbying money. Violators faced global sanctions, criminal charges, and shutdowns. The world didn't become perfect overnight. But the age of manipulation had been broken. People understood now they couldn't trust shiny smiles or funny jokes without questioning what was hidden underneath. And when documentaries about this global movement were made years later, they all started with the same image, a simple moment on a late-night talk show when one man stood up, walked off, and changed the world forever. Vin stood by his window, hearing the distant chants of protesters below. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathed deeply, and whispered, "No scripts. No lies, just truth." And the world listened.